So hi, everyone, and welcome to the Staying Safe on Our Streets presentation being hosted by Town of Huntington, the library there at the Town of Huntington. If you, this is being presented also by, let me just move this, let me just advance for a second here. Okay, tell you who we are. I'm Janine Logan. I am the director of the Long Island Health Collaborative, which is a voluntary coalition of nearly 300 organizations, one of them being the New York Coalition for Transportation Safety. And we all work together to improve the health of Long Islanders, mainly reducing chronic disease, and in this case, ensuring that we have safe streets so that people can walk and get their exercise in, ride their bike, get their exercise in, and stay healthy and safe. The New York Coalition for Transportation Safety is an organization that does just that. It advocates for pedestrian safety. It advocates and supports pedestrian and bicycle laws that are in New York State, teaching everyone about those laws so that we can, again, walk safely and bike safely on our streets.
Janine, I'm not seeing the slides.
You're not seeing the slides?
Yeah. Is there anybody else?
No.
Yeah.
I have to be
Share. Yeah, just share the slides.
I don't have a share screen option anymore. The library director, I don't have.
Yeah, you're still co-host. So at the bottom of your screen, there should be a share screen button, green.
No. Notes, comments. No.
Yeah, I can.
Click to add notes. I have nothing at the bottom of the screen. Am I minimized here?
You might be.
Let's see. There we go. Wait a minute. How's that? Got me? I got it, right?
Now
Yeah,
we got
you got it.
All right, so I'm not going to go through all those introductions again because that would be silly. So what we will do is just advance to the next slide. If I could get the slide to advance now, which I can't. Hold on a minute here. I knew this was going to happen. Why?
I think it's not set for slides.
Here.
No, it is. Pause, remote control, more. Participant, stop video, mute. Not the slide. I'm sorry, just hold on a second. It's not advancing for some reason.
Yeah, click slideshow and then hit something.
Shouldn't have to do that. It should advance. But hold on. Anyway, Cindy, why don't you start talking about the New York Coalition for Transportation Safety while I figure out the technical difficulties on the other end here.
Okay, well, just for everybody in the audience's information, we are a not-for-profit. We have been in existence since 1982. We originally came into being to try to get the seatbelt law passed in New York State, which along with several other organizations, which is why we were called a coalition, is the group that did prevail and was able to get the seatbelt law passed way back in 1985 at the end of the year, and it went into effect the summer of 1986. And from that, we were originally funded, believe it or not, by the automobile industry because they did not want primary seatbelt laws passed in all the states, which meant that if you had a primary law, the police could stop you just for not wearing a seatbelt rather than that, if they stopped you for speeding and you didn't have a seatbelt on, you'd get 2 tickets. New York's law says that you can get a ticket just for not wearing a seatbelt. So from there, we were funded by several automobile manufacturers to start to do safety education and to encourage people to wear seatbelts. And then airbags came into being. And from there, we had we spread out to doing all other types of safety education. And we began to work with New York State Governor's Traffic Safety Committee, who was funded to a large extent by the federal government, by the Federal Department of Transportation. And through that funding from the Department of Transportation, it flows through New York State and to nonprofit or other government agencies by way of a grant that allows us to in turn do our programs. And that's how this program is funded. And we really only had one year under our belt before COVID hit, and we had to switch to doing the type of program we're doing tonight, rather than, we do still go out and speak to people, but that's really only begun to pick up again this year. So we've found that a really good combination is some online and some in person. And depending on the time and how many people we're able to meet, it sometimes it's just more convenient for people to tune in online. So that's our background. And tonight we're going to talk to you about pedestrian and bicycle safety and some new types of mobility that are coming fast and furious into your neighborhood. All right, next.
Thank you. And there we have our other panelist is Mark. You can see him in the back there with the arrow pointing to his head. He's conducting, I guess, a bike rodeo.
Bike rodeo, yes.
Bike rodeo, and he is our program director, Mark Hoffacker.
Hello?
And then, Mark, do you want to say a few words?
No, let's move.
Okay.
Let's get.
And then behind the scenes, we have Liz Lee, our administrative assistant, Lynn Brown, program coordinator and educator, social media and web manager, and Christina Furlong, who has recently joined the coalition.
And has to give us a picture.
And has to give us a picture. Okay, so without further ado, here we go.
All right, first of all, I think that probably most of you who have tuned in must understand that that you even have an interest in this, must understand the problems that are out there right now in Nassau and Suffolk County regarding traffic safety. I mean, if you just look back to what happened over this past weekend, even though we focus more on pedestrians, the fact that those 5 people were killed on the Hutchinson River Parkway and another 2 on the Southern State Parkway, and all of them were under 21. And it just points out the issues that we face in trying to keep people safe once they get behind the wheel of a car or in front of the wheel of a car. So what we want to do is educate the public about, there are laws that are in New York State vehicle and traffic law that actually are intended to keep you safe. The problem is people disobey them, or they're not even aware of their existence, so they don't practice them. We try very hard to reduce the number of pedestrian and bicyclist deaths on Long Island. We are going to give you some hints on how best to protect yourself when you want to take a walk or a bike ride, or just be out for your health. And we'll familiarize you with transportation, new types of transportation that are coming along, mostly that are referred to as micro-mobility or e-mobility, and that includes e-bikes, scooters, mopeds, things of that nature. And not so much anymore, but we wanted you to recognize the impact that COVID-19 has had on traffic safety. When I say not so much anymore, not so much from the point of view of our being able to present in public, but no one can really come up with a great answer as to why traffic fatalities since the start of COVID have just gone through the roof. Okay, next. I'm not going to read you all of these, but if you want to just look through them, it'll give you some idea of what I'm talking about. I mean, this is, we started here with just March, and look at the numbers of traffic fatalities that exist. And
Let me say that, Of these, we picked out 7 here. And just to make 1 or 2 points that the headlines show you is 5 out of these 7s are hit and run. And that's a big problem today, that a lot of pedestrians, cyclists, unfortunately, if they're hit by a car, a lot of the drivers are taking off and driving away. And one of the reasons could be if they're intoxicated, they don't want to get a DWI. They might even come in the next day and say, I did it, but they wouldn't be drunk anymore. So they wouldn't get a DWI. That March 4th one, which is Huntington Station, that was Jericho Turnpike, probably not too far from where the library was. Like that took place at 4 a.m. And the woman who was hit was hit by a Jeep Cherokee. I think there's the second to the last talks also about an SUV. Another problem is these large vehicles. And if you're a pedestrian, if you're hit by a sedan, it's a different type of injury where you might, break a knee. But if a large vehicle, a truck, Ford Expedition, if they hit you, they hit your bellies, and you can get some very, very, if you live, very severe organ damage. So just to make a few points, in terms of why we put these headlines. Next.
Yeah, well, just to reinforce
Oh.
what you said, Mark, I don't believe it's on here, but there was a woman who was struck on Sunrise Highway approximately a week ago, and she was hit by 3 different vehicles. She managed to survive, I believe, until yesterday. And she was walking home from work. She worked in a store. She had worked there for years. She only had a 15-minute walk. It was 9:20 in the evening. And she, like I said, she was struck by 3 different vehicles. 2 of them stopped. 1 didn't. 1 took off. And I don't know. We have made an attempt to strengthen the penalty for leaving the scene, but I don't think we've strengthened it enough.
Right.
Next, Janine. All right, these are just some of the laws that exist to protect pedestrians. You should always cross at intersections or corners. And you should, if it exists, you should cross between the stripes that mark a crosswalk. And even if there isn't striping there, you should always make an attempt to cross at the corner because it's implied that a crosswalk is there. Drivers, according to New York State law, are supposed to yield to pedestrians in a crosswalk or at an unmarked crossing. Now, I'm not going to tell you that you should take your life in your hands and test this. There are localities that I'm aware of on Long Island and in other parts of the country where motorists actually do stop when there's a pedestrian in a crosswalk. But I don't, unless they're going very slow and you make eye contact with them, I would not attempt to force this point. You should always obey the walk, don't walk sign, even if it's still saying walk, but it's flashing, that means that it's about to change. So if it's a wide street and you don't think that you can make it across, wait for the next light. Pedestrians also have the right of way if a car is pulling in or out of traffic or across a sidewalk or out of a driveway. But because you have the right of way doesn't mean you should just blindly go for it. It really means that, the person who is in a vehicle is in a much better protected vehicle than the person who is walking without anything. So the idea is to protect eye contact with them or whatever, and make sure they see you, wave to them. That's the best thing you can do. Pedestrians, this is someplace where they're not allowed on limited access roads such as expressways or interstates. Sometimes it happens that you get a flat tire and you have to stop. But if you don't have to, it's best to never stop on a highway. Too many crashes happen there. Next.
Wait, just 1 second, Janine. One point, I don't know if Cindy made this. I think this is important, and especially in Suffolk County. If there is no sidewalk a pedestrian walks in the street facing the cars. So there's research that shows when a driver sees the face of a pedestrian and probably some eye contact, they're going to slow down a little bit. So I think that may be a little known law. It's important. And, you know, I live in Suffolk. There are a lot of places that don't have sidewalks. If there's a sidewalk, you should walk on the sidewalk. And, you know, by me, there's a lot of places where the sidewalks are only on one side of the street. They're kind of telling you cross the street and walk on the sidewalk as opposed to walking on the street. But I just want to reinforce that point.
Yeah, I think the most important item here is that you walk facing traffic.
Right.
That's the best thing you can do for yourself.
Yeah.
So, okay, next.
So we have a slide here just mentioning the libraries. Yeah, I don't know if our librarian could help us. So she told me you have a bike rack right at the library,
Yes, we do.
a big parking lot.
We have 2 lots, one owned by the school district in front and one on the side.
Okay, and there is a bus that goes to the library, but it sounds like not that many people use the bus. But one interesting point we talked about before the presentation is because you share that space with that school, there are times when school buses are kind of coming into your parking lot area and may change the traffic patterns. The librarian was telling me how, like, she won't go home at a certain time because the school buses, you know, she makes her schedule to avoid some of that extra traffic. But I would make when I heard about that, one point we usually make somewhere in this presentation, it says, and people don't think about this too much, is that parking lots are really dangerous. You know, you may not necessarily be a fatality because cars aren't going that fast, but people get hit a lot. And, you know, there's young kids walking around, you know, they're on crosswalks, people are backing in, they're not pulling in the right way. So, you know, people get knocked over. There's a lot of damage to your cars, you know, so, you know, parking lots are dangerous, just to make that point. Next. So, and we just also wanted to mention, we try to look at some local areas. We do, we observe certain intersections that are known as dangerous intersections. Just ourselves, we use the occupational therapy students just to see what's going on. And we picked a few years ago, we were on Route 110 and 15th Street and West Hills Road. So it's a very busy intersection. The photo on the right shows you how West Hills kind of angles into it. So it's not a typical, you know, just straight, you know, 4-corner. You see a little pedestrian island in there. So, and let's go to the next slide. You know, we saw a lot, the picture on the left, because there's that yellow around the lights, that'll tell you it's a state road. And the state was in the process of changing the lights. The state is making some changes, probably because there were a number of pedestrians, you know, hurt or crashes in that area. And so, you know, we saw a lot of people crossing mid-block. They wouldn't go to the crosswalks. It's very hard if you're driving up 110 and you want to get on West Hills Road. There's like you know, people don't get confused in terms of where they should make that turn. Every cyclist, I think, that we saw, which wasn't many when we observed, were, or maybe not everyone, but most of them were on the sidewalk. And that's technically you're supposed to be out on the street. They probably were scared, you know, to be out in the street. And then I think the next one shows a few of the recommendations we made. And so I don't know if any of you feel that that's a better intersection. And actually in a few minutes, Cindy will talk about some of the engineering changes that can be made to make the road safer, you know, for all road users. Next.
All right, well, this is just an example of if you do walk, perhaps some of you will have a walking club or you walk with a group, or you're just walking in an area where there's always a lot of people crossing a street, like a downtown business area, or like I'm sure parts of Huntington are. And so the picture on your left shows you a person who's doing everything in wrong. She requires the help of an aide, a walker to walk with. She's walking her dog. She's not walking facing traffic, and there's no sidewalk. And this poor lady wouldn't have a chance if a car came up and didn't see her. The one good thing is she's wearing a bright colored shirt. The people on the right-hand side, as you see, it's a large group. They're in front of a very new type of traffic signal. The crosswalk is very obvious. It's a different color from the rest of the road. It's brick and it's a white concrete. So this makes this group of people, much easier to see. So if you want to plan your route when you go for a walk, obviously you're better off walking in an area like this, where it would be probably safer for pedestrians to cross. Next. All right, these are just some of the recommendations. I don't know whether everybody has traffic signals that feature this exact design, because they do vary slightly from place to place. But the one thing that doesn't change is that you have to push it to get the walk signal. And generally speaking, most of the traffic signals in Nassau and Suffolk County will not give you a walk icon if you don't push that button. So the light will change for motor vehicles, but it will not change for pedestrians unless you push the walk button. So when it comes on, you want to make sure in particular that you watch for turning vehicles, because left turning vehicles strike pedestrians. That is the most common crash for injury to pedestrians. You just have, they are not looking for you. They are looking for, if it's a two-way street, they are looking for cars that are coming that they have to avoid. So they're not looking necessarily for people who are walking across the same way. Also, if you walk slowly, as I mentioned before, or you require assistance like a cane or a walker, don't try to cross it until you know that you have a fresh green light. And if it's a really wide street and there's an island or a median strip in the middle, if it's easier for you to just cross, you can wait in the middle until the next light turns. And also we tell people don't drink and drive, but it might be a good idea to rethink drinking and walking also, because there are many incidences, especially sometimes with the, late at night, where somebody's trying to do the right thing and walk home and they get hit by a car because they really don't have their wits about them. Next. Now, roadway designs, I'm not going to read you all of this, really can make crossing a street safer. What I'm going to tell you about is a lawsuit that was settled today in Nassau County that occurred in the crash took place in Port Washington, and it was a gentleman who was on a motorcycle making a left-hand turn, and he was struck by an oncoming car, and he wound up having his leg amputated. And the Nassau County Legislature and two courts found in favor of the gentleman, saying it was the design of the road that contributed to the cause of the crash, that there should have been different striping, that there should have been a traffic signal. And they cited innumerable complaints that people had filed about the dangerous location and how the traffic flowed. So yes, roadway design can play a big part in the safety of a road. And in the past, most roadway design has been for cars. It does not take into account the needs of all users. And by that, I mean pedestrians, bicyclists, anybody that's not in or who is outside of a motor vehicle. the roadways need to take in account that other people besides people in cars use highways and roads. So you want to think about that. And these road diets, pedestrian refuge islands, raised sidewalks, crosswalk visibility, all of those things have been put in place to try to make it safer for you to get across some of these streets that have traffic speed limits upwards of 50 miles an hour with somebody doing 60. A leading pedestrian interval, I don't know if you have them on your lights yet, but they're coming, they're on traffic lights. And what that is, at these very busy intersections with a high volume of traffic and foot traffic, the pedestrian will get the green light with the walk icon telling you you can walk before the motor vehicle person will get the light telling them they could go. So you will probably have a 10 to 20 second head start before the cars can start to, go forward. So those are tremendously helpful. For that particularly is probably one of the best things that prevents left-hand turn crashes, because in this way, the pedestrians are already out well into the middle of the street. Next.
On 110, above where we did that street observation, they're putting in pedestrian refuge islands. I don't know if any of you've noticed them. It's not even that wide, 110, but they're putting in the concrete in the middle. So if you get stuck, you have refuge. If it's good for people with disabilities or older people. So you see some changes being made, right there on 110. Next. So now we're going to give you a few bike laws. I don't know if you see, but I'm holding up. This is New York State vehicle and traffic law. And there's a section in here on bike laws, which you don't have to have a license to ride a bike, but people are supposed to know. I'm not going to tell you all of them. I'll tell you some of them. So first one's important, that bicyclists are required to follow the same laws and rules of the road as motorists. So one thing, a lot of times when I talk to people, for if it's kids, even adults, is it's good to think of the bicycle as a vehicle, non-motorized mostly. Now there's some motorized bikes, but and you have to stop at a stop sign. I'm not saying that cyclists do. You're supposed to yield a red light. You're supposed to stop. So, you have you got to abide by the law. You can't just do what you want. You can't be on a highway, just like pedestrians. You can't be cycling on the Meadowbrook Parkway, which I've seen sometimes people, on the side. Not too many, luckily. This is important, and it's different than pedestrians. You ride when you're riding your bike and you're out in the street. You ride with traffic. So you're a vehicle. You're going the same way that cars are going. And it's kind of because you're a vehicle, it's what the drivers expect. Now, in terms of the helmet law, children, this is New York State law, children under the age of 14 over the age of 1 must wear a helmet by law. Nassau County, about, it's probably 3 or 4 years now, changed it to 18. Localities, can change a little bit. We'll talk a little bit more about helmets in a second. Actually, next. So, if you have a bike, take a look at your bike. And again, think of the bike as a vehicle. So by law, you have to have a white reflector in the front and a red reflector in the back. When you're driving your car, you got white lights in the front, you got brake lights in the back, the red. So, and let's just jump to the third one, kind of related. If it's dark, you have to have a white light and a red light, more than just reflectors. And the law even says, that the light has to project 500 feet in the front. I can't remember it exactly, but that's really important, because I know when I'm driving around at night and there's people cycling and they don't have lights on their bike, sometimes they don't even have reflectors. They're pretty hard to see. So that's really important. And the last, I'm going to jump back, but you also have to have a bell horn. it's New York State law. Actually, I figured no one ever writes a summons for that, but it was funny. One of our meetings, a Limerick police officer was saying he gave a summons to somebody who didn't have a horn. They were hassling the police, so he knew he could give them a summons, for that reason. But, it's when you're driving, you honk your horn. And, just to jump up to the second one, by law, you can ride two abreast. And if a car is passing, you're supposed to go single file. That's the law. One thing you might see if you're down by the LIE in Nassau, Suffolk County on a Sunday morning, the service road, the bike clubs are out there. They're taking up the whole lane. That it's really technically against the law, but that's, I guess, why they're out there on a Sunday morning. And I could also mention that this is a very good thing. Suffolk County was the first county, and still, I believe, is the only county in New York State. About 2-3 years ago, they passed the 3-foot law, which says when we're driving and we're going to pass the cyclists, we have to give them at least 3 feet. Now, again, I don't know how many summonses are written for that, but I think it's a sense of at least we're respecting their space. I think I see actually drivers doing it. I'm very happy to see that. And I feel, it shows people sharing the road a little bit more. Next. Okay, so helmets. I don't know if you can see me. I got my helmet here. So it's one thing to have a helmet, and just a quick little tutorial about having a helmet that fits correctly. So I have an adjustable helmet, bicycle helmet. If I wear it like this, it's not doing me any good. It's on the top of my head. I got a big head. So I can adjust it. Not all helmets are adjustable, but some are. So then when I wear it, and I get this out of here, when you get it on your head, you want to get 2 fingers from your eyebrows to the bottom of the helmet. And it's supposed to be perpendicular, that picture, on the right, the top one. It's not supposed to be tilted back. But you want to, you actually tend to fall forward more. So you're trying to protect the front. Now your straps, you have this little tab here. You're supposed to set that, slides up and down, and put it right underneath your ears, kind of like forms a V. And then when you clip it on, you get 1 finger between the strap and your chin. So when you're wearing a helmet, it's kind of snug, not loose. That's the way you're going to protect your head the most. Helmets don't make you better bicycle riders, but a helmet is very effective at reducing brain injuries. And, people, 35-year-olds don't have to wear helmets, but any good cyclist wears a helmet. And if you have a cracked helmet, or you have a really old helmet, every helmet's got a little sticker on the inside that'll tell you how old it is. If you have a 20-year-old helmet, get another one. It's not going to be as strong. Next. So just a few more comments about bike. The photo on the right, that's illegal. It's illegal for a car to park in a bike lane. On the right, you're seeing an unprotected bike lane. It's paint. I guess it's helpful. It's trying to direct people. If there were a few cyclists, there would be better. But again, we talk about engineering. On the left, 347, which is a pretty major road. They did this a few years ago. Again, it was a state Department of Transportation. They took the bike lane, they put it off-road. So they're not competing with their cars. They're not riding their bikes right next to a car. There's pedestrians using that. There's cyclists. You're a lot safer in a protected bike lane. And, we see some on Long Island. I think we see more bike lanes like the one on the right, but they did a pretty good job, I think, at 347. Next, so I want to show you 2 other photos. Something common that happens when you're cycling is called dooring, where the driver may open up their door and knock you over, but possibly, into oncoming cars like the picture on the right. So I don't know if you'd see this, but just a quick tip of something called the Dutch reach. And the Dutch reach, when you park your car and you pull into a spot, you're usually looking ahead, you're turning the engine off, and you just open the door with your left hand. And maybe there's a pedestrian or a cyclist or another driver. I saw it once in my life, where the car almost took the door off. Here's what you do. The technique: open your car door, pull in, use your right hand to open the door. So when you're using your right hand, what that does is it forces you to turn your head. Even in my age with poor eyesight, I still have decent peripheral vision. So if I'm turning my head, I might see a cyclist or a car or a pedestrian, and with my peripheral vision, or I might see him in my side view mirror too, before the door starts to swing open. So that's not a law. I try to do it. I can't say I remember it every single time, but that's a good technique for making everybody safer. Next.
All right, these are examples of what I mentioned right at the beginning of the presentation. These are called micro-mobility devices. We put up pictures just to give you some idea of what we're talking about. They cover such a vast category of new devices that are out there on the roadway now that it's hard to even keep up. But different types of bicycles that are electric powered, which is where the E comes from, they can go up to, there are some that go as fast as 30 miles an hour. They have these lithium batteries that everybody is talking about now because they are, if they are not the battery that was intended for the vehicle that you're using and it's a substitute battery, they're very prone to fire. So an e-mobility device would have these characteristics. It's motorized, it says low speed, but with each new generation of these that come out, they go faster. What they all have in common is that they're fairly small. So common examples, as I said, would be scooters, the sit-down scooters, as well as the stand-up ones, which you probably see a lot of young boys and girls riding. And the hoverboard, which is that self-balancing one. I think they're less and less being used now. It's much more the sit-down scooter and the stand-up scooter and the e-bike that are really prevalent. And there are locations now. There are, I don't know if Huntington has a bike share program or not, but some locations that had bike share programs like City Bike in the city have now taken to renting electric vehicles also. So they're coming, but you just have to be careful because they really do go quite fast and they don't make a sound. So you would never hear them coming.
Cindy,
Next.
there's a question in the Q&A
Oh, good.
from Colleen asking, are the rules the same for skateboarders?
Yes.
Yes.
Skateboarders cover, it's the same laws that cover bicyclists for skateboarders. They're supposed to go with traffic. They're supposed to wear a helmet up to the age of, like bicyclists up to a certain age.
Are you
Pretty much the same. They don't have to have reflective lights on them that I know of, but yes, they do have to have, and they, well, they have to have a helmet, but
Is she
they have
talking about, aren't there some electric skateboards, or is she just talking about a regular skateboard?
well, I think that she means the regular. I'm not.
It just says skateboards.
Oh, okay.
Colleen, if you have any other questions, just ask them. I'll go to the next slide.
All right, this is, we just want to recap. This is really meant to be safety tips for pedestrians. I can't stress enough. I know people don't think about this. If you walk for exercise, you're probably comfortably dressed and you have an option of routes that you want to take, and they can be through a park or be protected or whatever. But if you're walking because you're going to work or you're using public transportation, you tend to walk the same route every day, and you probably don't think hardly anything of it, and you probably take much greater risks than you would take if you were walking a different route every day. So the best things that you could do for yourself are wear something reflective. I know if you're going to work or it's winter, you're going to have a heavy coat on, but even if you have reflective, there's reflective ribbon and tapes or something you could tie to your handbag, or if you're walking with sneakers, bright colored sneakers that are reflective. We have on occasion given out vests, like you would see highway construction workers wearing, those bright colored vests, so that they're, that you're visible, especially if it's at night. But the best thing really is that you stay alert and pay attention to what you're doing. Do not put your face into your cell phone. Please, it's between the drivers who are texting and the people who are walking and talking or walking and texting, it's just a tragedy waiting to happen. If you're walking or bicycling at night, we can't urge you enough to wear reflective things. Many bicycle helmets have lights on the back of them that you can actually turn on that flash. There are reflectors that you can buy for your bike that flash with a little light in the back. If you walk and you walk consistently, now we just went to daylight savings time. Daylight savings time and in the fall, when we lose an hour, are two of the worst times of the year for people, for pedestrians and car crashes. And so we suggest, if at all possible, you use your cell phone. It doesn't matter. But if you are able to flash a light when you're walking, at least that, people know you're out there, and you are much less likely to trip or to fall or stumble going across the street, especially if it's bad weather or there's puddles or the road is broken up in any way. And many of our roads are broken up. Okay, next.
So some tips for bicyclists, and let me first say, go through a few of them, but try to ride consistently. I think that's just a good start. Don't speed up, slow down. When I see kids, I really slow up driving because I know they're going to do that. They're going to dart in and out. They're going to slam their brakes on. They're going to speed up. They're not going to be consistent. If you saw somebody like me riding out in the street, I wouldn't be going too fast. If you see one of those guys wearing an Italian bike outfit, they're going to probably be a little quick, but they're going to run the red lights. But they might be good bike riders, actually. They might be very, very skilled. So it helps the drivers, assess the situation if you're a consistent bike rider. Cindy's talked about making eye contact. I totally agree. I like to do it when I'm biking or walking. I have fun trying to make eye contact with other road users. Turning vehicles, the left turn, the horn. You can't, if a bike like that picture, that's a bicycle for one person, you can't have two people on it. That's against the law. It makes it harder to ride. It's against the law to attach yourself to another vehicle on the roadway. Like when I was a kid, I remember, grabbing onto a Good Humor truck, my bike. The guy stopped and came out, really yelled at me, for do that. And it's also the law, the last one, don't, if you're riding a bike, Cindy talked about distractions, I would say don't use any earphones, but by law, you can only have one earphone and you can't have two earphones. And that's also true when you're driving. You have to be aware of the situation, that's going, things that are going on around you. Next. Let's see if we can get any more questions. Any thoughts about the area, traffic concerns that you see around where you live?
Yeah, if you have any questions, type them in the chat or the Q&A. I'm not sure, our library host, if individuals can unmute and ask a question. I don't know if you-
Yes, people can unmute if they feel more comfortable.
You can unmute and ask a question. And while everyone is thinking about the questions that they want to ask, if you would be so kind as to hover your phone over the QR code and take a very quick survey. I'll also put the survey link in the chat, so if you can do it that way if you want. And the reason why this is important because it enables us to collect data about what the participants have learned during this presentation. And it enables us to collect data so that we can continue to apply to the state and other funding agencies for grants to do education like this. And also we use it when we might want to place a media story or talk to a planning board in a local community, in a municipality, if there happens to be some issues with particular pedestrian intersection with pedestrians getting hit and injured. So if you could do that, that would be great. In the meantime, I think there's a question, so let me see. It says, this is from Lynn, and she's asking, are there any resources available for walkers or bikers through your organization?
Yes, we have print resources, we have, we could come and speak to your group if you would like that. We have messages that can be let to the community if you wanted to publicize it. We recommend, depending on where you live, sometimes we work with the police departments, and June is Pedestrian Safety Month with the police departments for a whole month that we do. We have connection with the people from New York State who are our funders, as well as the federal government that funds us. So we could give you several sources for
Yeah, one of
resources.
the nice programs I think we do with communities and the Long Island Health Collaborative, it's called Walk with the Doc. And a doctor will lead a walk and talk about the health aspects of walking. And we start that way, but then we'll, pick a routes in Kings Park or, we've done it in a lot of places. And we will, with folks observe, look at, we see cracked sidewalks, we ask people to look at, if they choose their own neighborhood, we get a few people, if you want us to do a walk with a doc and kind of like a survey the area a little bit, we could give our expertise. Those are programs we love, like active programs like that.
Yeah, and we also do programs for school children. We do bicycle rodeos, various types of education programs. We work with local legislators. One thing we didn't talk about, Mark, when we were talking about the bikes is, I know that there's been a problem on Long Island with the ATVs and dirt bikes. And just for clarification, neither of those vehicles are allowed on a highway or roadway or anything. They were intended
Right.
for trails.
Right.
I don't see any other, I have another question here, hold on. Who should she contact? Person you should contact is, I can give her any number of,
Go up one more slide, Janine. It
The
might
last
be on
slide, we
there.
had some resource.
I am trying to get there. I lost all my slides for some reason. Hold
All
on.
right,
Give me
I'll
the
give
phone
out
number.
my information.
I don't know why I can't get to the slides. I copied the link into the chat and then I can't get back to the slides.
Well, Cindy,
Well, the easiest way to reach me is through email. So
Okay.
it's C Brown, BROWN 1 at Nassau, NASSAU County, COUNTY NY.gov. And Nassau County is all one word. And the office phone number
There we
is,
are.
well,
There it is. Sorry, I'm back.
oh, that's okay. 516-571-6808. And Janine's number is the one immediately underneath of it, the Long Island Health Collaborative. We work together. We're on a statewide pedestrian safety initiative that comes from New York State. There's even some funding available for smaller initiatives if anybody is interested. Not through me, but through the state. I can give you the contact information. So just get in touch with me and I'll send you whatever I have or what you're interested in.
Okay, I think that might be it.
These are some of the resources that you
resources, yeah.
can use if, and depending if you want data or what kind of, the Institute for Traffic Safety and Research, ITSMA.org, is located out of the University of Albany and the Rockefeller Institute, and they collect all the data on car crashes and police ticketing data. So that's a website that anyone can use, but it will show it to you, and it's by county and by location. So you can see how good or how bad it is where you live. Okay,
Okay.
thank you all for
I don't
coming.
Thank
see-
you.
I'm just checking, making sure I don't see any other questions. And if everyone could, for some reason I can't get this copy and paste it in, but I don't know why, but if you can, it's worked.
We're
What
in
do you do?
presentations, except when we have to use the computer.
Yeah, I mean, but anyway, if you have your smartphone, if you could just hold it up against, I'll put it back up there. That QR code, as I said, it's very helpful for us to collect that data and that information. But we do thank everyone for participating this evening and joining us. Every time I listen to any of these presentations, and I've listened to many, I always learn something new, and I'm very appreciative of that. I do feel that there are so many laws, but really not too many people follow them. I don't know enforcement. You did, Mark, talk about that one police officer who gave someone a summons because they didn't have a bell or a horn on their bicycle. I wonder, as a parent, buying a bicycle for a child, if you even think about any of these laws, and if you're even aware that you should be putting that bell or horn on your child's bicycle, that's something.
The bike stores don't even know.
That's what I'm saying. So it's just such a shame, and then that's a simple solution to put a bike or a horn or a light or the reflectors of or whatever it should be.
Yeah.
We have a raised hand. Hold on a minute, Colleen. Colleen, you can unmute and ask a question.
Well, thanks everyone for attending, and thanks to you all for sharing this safety information. Let's have a safe spring and summer.